Cannabis in the workplace, a topic that is surely going to bring up some biases, particularly around three different questions. Are we talking about discrimination? Are we talking about individual rights, or are we talking about public safety? A really good frame to place around this is looking at some of these questions. Let's imagine a bus driver who drives children to school in the morning. Let's think about that individual. Then a miner, a construction worker, or a surgeon, and the use of cannabis in those circumstances. Now let's have a look at, say, a mathematician, a startup engineer, or an artist. How do we balance, and how can it be fair for both groups of people? And can we get to a point where everyone can see this from the same lens? This is what we're going to explore today on Higher Living. Cannabis in the workplace. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Higher Living with Chad. And we're going into something, as mentioned in that quick intro, which is likely to bring up some personal biases. So we're looking at cannabis in the workplace. It's very interesting because at this moment, we see Astrid, and you can have a look, we're just posting it here. They've been able to post, they have posted about this today, which is really cool to see that we're aligned in our thinking. We had conversations around this last week. We're going to be doing some more content on this, which we will get to at the end. We've already filled 50% of our quota for this campaign. And as you listen on, and if something comes up for you, throughout these next few minutes of content, and that you're like, hey, I've got an opinion on this, and I want my voice to be heard, we'll let us know, and we'll see if we can include you into it as well. Because this is a topic that it's going to bring up a whole range of issues, right? As I mentioned before, is it public safety? Is it individual rights? Or is it discrimination? Or is it something else that we are missing? We're going to go into a number of different examples. We're going to place a context around some of these environments where some of these challenging questions may come up. And then we're going to show a little bit of a personal story that we think is super relevant to add some context around this. As usual, before we get started, we're asking you to subscribe, like, and to share this. And today it's going to become the content that you're seeing is likely to bring up a lot. So drop some comments below, or get in touch with us right now if you want to be part of this campaign that we're going to be doing when we're exploring cannabis in the workplace. We're doing this together. Subscribe, like, share, and be part of the journey. So let's go to start with the context, right? So let's say, regardless of what industry, is there a difference? And we see this with driving laws. Is there a difference if an individual is consuming prescribed cannabis compared to if they're taking pain medicine, if they're taking anti-anxiety medication, benzos, for example, or any other mental health treatment? What is the difference there? Where is the line in the sand? Where can that be drawn in certain industries? And where can that be drawn for different individuals with different needs? So there's a perception of how cannabis is going to affect you. But we all know there's such variability in the response of individuals to cannabis, particularly in terms of the route of administration, which means how you take it. Yeah, because some of them, as we went into last week in terms of stigma, in terms of inhaled routes of administration, it's much more evident. And that generally comes with much more stigma. And I think that's going to touch some of you that do enjoy consuming your flower in different ways. Maybe it is through a bong, maybe it is through a joint, or maybe you're combining your vape with a pipe, as we saw in the UK at the moment. If you haven't seen this example, this is quite interesting to look at. So we've got an individual in the UK prescribed cannabis, and under UK law, they can consume that medication wherever they are. And so as we're seeing at the moment, this individual is consuming their product in a wide range of different situations, and the response of the community is split. The response of the community of cannabis users is split. Some saying, why are you doing it so much and in open? It's creating more stigma. And others are like, go for it. Well done for you, being brave and courageous for wherever you consume your cannabis. There's no doubt that the way that you consume your cannabis has an impact on the perception of how that's going to affect you. And I dare say the identity of you. Yeah, that is, and we need to change some of that stigma. There's no doubt about it. But it is very important to think about that first question. Should there be a difference between pain meds, benzos, or any other mental health treatment and cannabinoids? Yeah, that's the first thing. And we've seen that within driving law, so you probably get where we're at. But this isn't about us telling you, it's starting some discussion, yeah? The other one then is the context. So what do we look at? One would be considered out of hours. So let's go for those. Let's focus on what is deemed high risk jobs. Yeah. So let's look at construction. Let's look at mining. Let's look at education. So a teacher. Yeah. Healthcare. And then, yeah, like I said before, the surgeon, but it's healthcare. So let's think about those examples, right? So do you want your teacher down the front vaping or with a bong? Do you want the surgeon? Do you want the construction worker? Do you want the miner? Do you want the transport individual being directly under the influence? And then is there the difference between if they have had a pill and no one is aware of that compared to, well, they're alleviating their symptoms and they're able to do what they need to do. So should it be a factor? Right? This is going to bring up a lot of personal biases, as mentioned before. So we're very interested. Drop the comments below or let us know what your thoughts and feelings are about this. But in those high-risk situations, there's generally testing that goes with it. And so then the question becomes, is it going to be zero tolerance, i.e. nothing at all? There's going to be random testing. If that testing proves to be positive, you'll lose your job. If you've got a family, or you have different circumstances just for yourself, it doesn't matter if you've got a family or not, you want to survive, right? So if you have got something which is a legal prescription, maybe you're in construction or you're in mining and you have really serious back pain, you have PTSD, you can't sleep, whatever it is, and you utilize your medicine outside of hours, but then you test positive, you lose your job. How's that sit for some of you? In response, it could be, well, let's go for out of hours. So if you are working in one of these, in one of these positions, in your own time, we don't want any impairment when you come to work. So as long as you have that under control, that is okay. Come in as long as there's no impairment. How do you test impairment? There's a few things that are coming up at the moment, but that's a big question, right? So it's a big, big question that is up for discussion. I know there's an inquiry which Astrid have been talking about, so we will reference this once more. Support the girls, and it's good to see that people in the industry are aligned in talking about similar issues. The other thing is a completely green workspace. This isn't environmental. We're talking about cannabis within the workplace. And that's probably then to segue into where could that be more appropriate? So, and then does it come up with discrimination? What? So a designer, an artist, startup teams, someone who works in the garden, like, are they allowed to do it just because it's different roles, and is that okay? Or do we need to consider that public safety versus individual rights versus discrimination? Very complex to look at, and each of you are going to have different opinions on that. If we want to have a look at some decent examples, in Australia, we've still got a little bit to go, but if we have a look at two major companies, we've got Amazon, pretty interesting case there. And so what they said, they had a rule, they had a change in policy that allowed new employees, they didn't have to be able to, in legal states, they were allowed to use cannabis outside of the workplace. But existing employees were part of old contracts. And so when some of the existing employees started using cannabis because they saw a policy change, they tested positive, they got fired, it brought up a lot of controversy. Now, Amazon backtracked on that decision, and any of the employees that were fired then came back into Amazon. but it's a very interesting topic. And then Marriott, the chain of hotels, they have a policy in medical states that if you are a valid medical patient, you're able to consume. Now, again, what does that look like and where are you consuming? There's some questions. It comes up to root of administration and stigma around it, right? And I guess the way that you consume is probably going to have an influence on potentially your perspective and what is right or wrong. And that UK example, again, this is going to bring up a lot. There's context to how it is consumed, right? There's no doubt about it. And then there's so many examples of zero tolerance. Microsoft is one that has zero tolerance. And then there's many, many other examples, particularly in those high risk industries. And we know there's a lot of focus in terms of workplace disputes in Australia at the moment for what role cannabis can have in the workplace and how beneficial it can be to be able to support mental health, absenteeism, and be used as a medicine compared to, hey, there's public safety issues and there's stigma that's associated with it. Very complex, and glad we're going into it today. What's probably helpful to say is that I've got two examples. One was when I was a cancer patient. So I was taking a chemotherapy, which I took it on a daily basis, extreme symptoms, high toxicity levels. I took a chemotherapy, which was a derivative of DDT, banned from human consumption in 1972. And I was putting that into my body AM and PM. So you can imagine the side effects that went along with that. Cannabis was something that helped me considerably to manage my symptoms. I had a role at the time that I won't get into. However, I would not have taken that cannabis while I was in that position for the role that I had. However, having a capsule that I had, knowing that the titration was around 90 minutes, knowing that I could take something at 4 p.m. and that last hour when I wasn't seeing clients and I wasn't impaired, I knew that I was okay. I would then have the relief from the cannabis. It had no effect on my performance. It probably enhanced it. And then the balance of who I was as a man and an individual in that workplace, I was probably a much better worker because I knew I was getting my relief and combating the chemo while also being inhabited the identity and the dimension of myself as one that goes to work. And I am a contributing member of of society rather than how I was previously. So it was very important for my identity. Fast forward to now, 7 years later, an average of 70 to 80 hour weeks consistently over this period of time. Is it possible that I've been able to do those amount of hours without having a titration schedule? No, it's not, right? So if we have a look at what I mainly do, a lot of it is strategy, a lot of it's creativity, designing product, working with the team, writing proposals, deep thinking, deep focus, high creativity. And I think any of you in roles where you may be in the arts, you may require creativity, you are doing long hours, there isn't a lot of interpersonal components to your role where it can be a little bit in solitude. You can have your headphones on, you have the right dosing. The problem is stopping work. The problem is getting out of the zone. And again, that comes back to what sort of products you're having, what sort of minor cannabinoids you're including into this. So it's not always, that perception that you're just getting blazed out of your mind and getting medicated. It's utilizing the plant and the different cannabinoids to then be able to have that effect. Again, having something like On Tracker, where I know I've got a set product, I've got a set dose. If I take that, there's guaranteed, right? Guaranteed that I'm getting this big boost. So if I know I'm kind of getting a little bit fatigued, I know I've got a lot of writing to do, I know I've got a big day ahead of me, I know I'm getting slightly fatigued, I've got products that I can integrate into my day to ensure that I get that boost and I'm able to come out. So what does that mean? It's extremely beneficial. The cognitive benefits that I've experienced from this, why I'm doing a podcast talking about this, and the high focus is just it's like a performance enhancer. There is no doubt about it. avoids burnout, supports mental health, supports coping, supports problem solving, supports creativity. Now, who doesn't want some of that? 100%. But then when we have a look at these high risk roles, there's different factors that we need to be considering. But you can see why it's juicy, right? You can see why if you're an individual, you've got a sore back and you're not sleeping well, or you've got PTSD. And then you hear this guy saying, well, he can take cannabis and he speaks about it openly. But if I do it, I'm going to lose my job and then I've got nothing for family. That's not fair. They're big questions, very big questions that we're not able to solve on this. But together again, I think we can start unpacking the stories. We can unpack the experiences. We can unpack the effects. We can unpack the opinions that you may have, maybe as a carer, maybe as a friend, or as a patient yourself, or maybe you're a recreational user and you've got some input in this as well. As you saw, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. This is very complex, as indicated several times throughout this, and it is going to bring up some of your personal experiences. So if anything that is being covered today that touches or connects with you, let us know so we can share that with others and we can really start forming an opinion about how do we start seeing these things and how do we need to weigh how do we provide a weighting to the different roles that individuals could have, the different options of medications that people have, and then the context in terms of how they consume it. All of these are wonderful questions that we need your help with. So let's get started. Get in touch with us now, and let's see how we can provide more value to the wider community, because we've got a growing population around the world that is going to be looking at this. So let's do this together. This is Chad from Higher Living. Thank you very much.